Hey everybody, Justin Horvath here. I want to take a few minutes to walk through a full recap of the Leavenworth real estate market for 2025 and compare it to what we saw in 24 and 23. Now, I've recently published a written version of this update on my website blog, and this video is really meant to be a companion piece. So if you prefer watching instead of reading, or you want to do both, you got options. Now, the goal here isn't just to review the numbers, but to look at how the market has shifted over the last few years and what that means if you're thinking about buying or selling in 2026. Okay, now let's take a look at pricing. So the average sales price for 2025 ended just above $707,000, which is down roughly, right? 4.6% from 2024 when the average was just over 741. Now, that said, prices were still well above what we saw back in 2023 when the average was closer to 633. Now, if we take a look at the median price, you're going to see a similar trend, right? The median sales price for 2025 is at 600,000, which is down from 685. However, that's still higher than what we saw in 2023 at 561. So what this tells us is that the market hasn't fallen apart, it's corrected itself, right? The rapid appreciation that we saw in the pandemic years and afterward, it's finally cooled down, especially in the middle market area, right? As far as middle pricing goes. So while values remain supported longer term. So here's your seller takeaway, right? Pricing based on last year's peaks, it's going to be risky, right? Buyers are cautious, homes are priced with 2024 expectations, they're going to take longer to sell and they're probably going to need more price reductions. Now, buyer takeaway, price stability has returned. So your money is going to go a little bit further today than it did a year ago, especially if you're flexible on things like timing and condition of the home. All right, so over the last 3 years, you can see, a steady increase, right, for available homes for sale, kind of in and around Leavenworth areas. It includes Beshaston too. Now you'll see in 2025, we had a total active inventory increase of 16.8% compared to the year before. And we ended the year in 2025 with 153 homes for sale. That increase, it kind of pushes us further into what's considered a buy it market territory, right? So if you look at overall months of supply, we ended the year at 10.2 months of supply, which again, that's a 25% increase from the year before when we were sitting at 8.2 months of supply. Now, this doesn't mean that buyers get to come in and make extreme lowball offers, right? Especially on higher end homes. But it does mean that buyers have more options. You've got more time, more negotiating power, right? Really, than we've seen in the last handful of years. Now, the seller takeaway here is kind of same thing I've been saying for the last handful of months, right? Competition's higher. Buyers are more selective. Pricing and presentation matter more than ever. And if your home isn't positioned properly, it's going to sit longer, plain and simple. Now, buyer takeaway, again, same stuff I've been saying for a couple months, but you finally have that breathing room, right? More inventory means that you have better selection. You've got a stronger position to negotiate, especially on homes that have been sitting on the market for a while. All right, in 2025, our average days on market, it increased to 87 days, right? And that's up from the year before at 71 days, which is up from the year before that at 66 days. Now, what's interesting though, right, is if we take a look at kind of the month-to-month data here, you're going to see really consistent seasonality that we've seen with the years before. So spring and early summer, they continue to move the fastest, while late summer, fall, winter, potentially, they slow down significantly. So if we look here, we'll see March of 2025, this was the longest average days that we saw, right, at 165. It's very similar. If we go back the year before, it was in February at 168 days. Now, June this last year was the fastest month, right? That was 27 days on market. And again, if you go back to the June before, it was at 36. So very similar there. Now, here's your takeaways for sellers. If timing matters, which is a big if, right? You need to be on the market by May, right? Which means you need to have stuff getting going before then in order to take advantage of peak demand. Listings that come on late summer, fall, you're going to expect significantly longer timelines. Now, buyer takeaway, shopping outside of peak season often creates opportunity. So you're going to have, during these slower months, you're going to have time to bring, more inspections to the table. You're going to potentially be more flexible on price terms because there aren't a lot of other people out there purchasing homes, which is why they're taking longer to sell. When we look at how close homes sell versus what their current asking price was, we see a bit of softening year over year. So if we go to 2023, right, you see that homes were getting 96.4% of what they were currently listed for. Now that dips a little bit in 2024 to 95.2%, and then we finally land at 94.7% of the asking price here in 2025. Now, like always, the month-to-month data, it's more revealing. If we look in here, you're going to see that May and June consistently see the strongest results. So you see here, May of 2025, 100% of the asking price was received. Now, the biggest discounts typically show up early fall, right? Think September through November. We also see it pop up again in January and February because buyer activity is just slower. So you can see, here in December, we're coming down to 94. You see this low point here was January of this year as well. So a little bit of an anomaly here in September. We didn't have a lot of total sales, and so didn't take much to change the average down to 90%. But here, seller takeaway overall, right, is negotiating, it's back. And the days of getting multiple offers over what your asking price, it's just not really there anymore. So plan on some level of concessions. It leads to smoother transactions, especially if you're outside of peak season. Now, buyer takeaway, your timing matters. Slower periods are going to give you more leverage in negotiating on price, closing costs, or repairs, versus if you're competing in those peak seasons, you're going to be closer to that 100% list price, right? Less terms, less negotiating power. Okay, before we move to kind of final thoughts and strategy for 2026, I've got a quick note on the luxury market. So one important distinction when we're talking about homes priced over $1 million, for the most part, they followed very similar trends that we saw in the rest of the market. Longer marketing times, a little bit more negotiating, but something we saw that was different was the average sale prices for this segment, again, houses over $1 million, actually increased 5.5% year over year from 2025. So what this tells us is demand still remains strong for high quality, well-positioned luxury properties, especially things with, think, views, acreage, or unique features, right? Big garages or ADUs, pools, things like that. So I'll continue to touch on luxury trends in these broader updates, and I do plan to release a separate, more focused report on the 1 million and up market. But quick note here, let's get into the final recap and thoughts. Now, looking back at 2023, 2024, 2025 together, the Leavenworth market has clearly shifted into a more balanced environment. This is a good thing. Inventory is higher, buyers are more patient, and pricing requires precision rather than optimism. Now, for sellers heading into 2026, preparation, timing, realistic pricing, these are your keys to success. Buyers, this is a market where strategy matters. You've got fewer multiple offer scenarios, you've got an ability for more inspections, which creates more opportunity to negotiate. If you're considering buying or selling and want to talk about how these trends apply to your specific and unique situation, feel free to reach out. If you'd like a full written breakdown, you can find it in the link below. I'll put it in the description. For now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.